There are no political prisoners. Nobody is in prison because of his political belief. Whenever he voices his opinion, he's left free. He can even demonstrate against the law which governs demonstrations. And we don't touch them.
Political detention was the most pervasive violation of human rights during the 20-year Marcos regime. Around 70,000 Filipinos from all walks of life were arbitrarily arrested, denied due process of law, and made to languish in jail for months or even years. Political detainees became the living evidence of the regime's systematic violation of human rights. They became the living martyrs, stark symbols of resistance to tyranny and dictatorship. Over the years, political detainees have streamed back into society, released from jail mainly through the pressure exerted by local and international human rights organizations. A popular uprising in February 1986 that led to the dismantling of the Marcos dictatorship and the ascendancy to power of Corazon Aquino unlocked the gates to freedom for hundreds of political detainees. Their release drew strong disapproval from the military and much jubilation from cause-oriented organizations. Nevertheless, the political detainees returned to their families and friends and to a society ravaged by dictatorship. For the political detainees, the struggle for a just and humane society did not culminate upon imprisonment. Indeed, imprisonment failed to silence them, as physical and psychological torture failed to maim their spirits. Their voices, raised in a symphony of protest, continued to sing songs and dreams of liberation for the people. Listen to these voices, for they have survived even the harshest prison ordeal to reveal before us their stories, stories of captivity, stories of courage.
Hindi tayo titigil hanggat di nagwawagi. Ang ating mithiing magkapantay-pantay, walang magsasamantala, walang mang-aaki. Yan ang sandigan ng ating pamumuhay. Pasya ng karamihan ay ating liligumin. Agad tutupin ng walang alinlangan, mananaig ang
The similarity of their experiences brings them together to share both painful memories and efforts to alleviate their common burden.
SELDA is trying to help political prisoners. You know that it is the only organization composed entirely and exclusively of former political prisoners, and then it does have several programs ongoing to try and help them get back into the mainstream of society.
I think the organization of ex-prisoners is meant to do two things. One is to bear collective group and therefore inescapable witness that ex-detainees are there and they are symbols both of the Marcos repression and the people's resistance. Secondly, because under the current regime there are forces who still want to restore some form of authoritarianism and want to brand any form of dissent as illegal and subversive, ex-prisoners banding together not just for mutual help but for continuing their goals and continuing their legitimate struggle in the service of the people are a political force that help improve and broaden the democracy that we are trying to build after February. Beyond that, there are very immediate, realistic needs of prisoners, including psychological rehabilitation, mutual support, or even shared memories. I mean, you know, detention was a special experience and people feel very close. And so organization is like a reunion, not only sharing memories, but I said renewing visions.
The problem of political prisoners is the usual. I guess it's really is an exacerbation of the national problem of employment, of economic opportunities, and then you add to that the problem of adjustment to society, the traumatic experiences, the psychological problems which many political prisoners are undergoing and have undergone. And there's even the matter of having the burden of criminal records as you live in this society, when you apply for a visa, when you apply for a job. And so I think that we have to move, or this government has to move a little bit faster in correcting the sins of the past, the injustices of the past, and allow the political prisoners somewhat more equal opportunities to seek meaningful lives and to seek their places in the sun.
Ako si Henry, bikutan ng galing, bilang taga-gupit at kulturang gawain. Ngayoy nakalaya, hindi rin titigil hanggang ang kalayaan ganap na makamtan. Tumbalay, 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 tumbalay. Kapit bisig kasama sa ating pagkakaisa at ang SELDA ngayon.
Their bodies were freed from prison, but their spirits were still caged in the prison house of memory. The deeply etched imprints of torture, prison hardships, and prolonged isolation continue to ebb and flow in their minds, hampering their full integration into the mainstream of society. Their stories cry to be heard.
Yung pagkahuli pa lang, mga 11 ng gabi yun eh. Diretso na, tuloy-tuloy. Yung biglang dampot. Siyempre, medyo lito-lito pa, gulong diretso, dala sa safe house, tapos diretso hinubala na doon. Yung bawat...
Thrice a political detainee under the Marcos regime, Adora Faye de Vera's story dates back to her involvement in the nationalist movement in the late 60s. After serving a short stint in jail for posting anti-government posters right after the declaration of martial law, she was rearrested in 1976 while organizing a peasant community in Quezon. After her release in 1979, she was again arrested in 1984 and accused of being an NPA Amazon. Over the months of captivity, she was heavily tortured, and worse, she bore the ultimate degradation of rape as a woman detainee. After a long period of estrangement from her family, Adora Faye now relishes being a mother to 2 growing sons. Once a week, she brings Ronald to the Children's Rehabilitation Center, an institution primarily set up for the children of victims of human rights violations. The wounds of incarceration indeed take time to heal.
I was able to talk about it in a more relaxed way only some 7 or 8 years later, and I had to undergo a therapy with a psychiatrist because it was repressed so long. I was very aware that it could happen to anybody, it does happen to anybody, and especially to women activists who are prone to rape from the military.
Well, from all the way I was sexually abused, at the same time being interrogated, parang dala na yung interrogation and sexual abuse. And then, pagdating doon sa safe house, because I was blindfolded from the very start, no, at saka handcuffed, well, I was tied at the back of my head.
Hilda Narciso was a school teacher before her arrest in Davao 1983. Like Adora, She survived the excruciating ordeal of torture over the months of complete isolation. Hilda will be remembered as the dauntless woman who divulged the sexual abuse she suffered under the hands of the military. Like Adora Faye, the trauma of sexual abuse instilled in her consciousness a deeper understanding of the degradation and general plight of women in our society.
If you will look at sexual abuse or any form of sexual molestation, it is easy to understand that for women, it's one of the most effective tools to eventually inflict very severe trauma or damage to the person's identity. So I would think that many people who are concerned about political repression have already found a very, very advantageous use for sexual torture because it leaves very, very severe marks on the person's psychological and emotional makeup.
Minsan nga, parang hindi na ako yung pinapangyarihan nun eh. Minsan nga nagsasagutan kami nung interrogator na sinububalan ako. Natatawa na nga ako sa sarili ko, pero parang sa likod lang ng ulo ko yun na natatawa ko na, wow, ang galing ah. Sino sumulat ng script no? Ang husay ah. Yung ganun, parang nanonood na lang ako eh.
They can really implement what they really want. Para kang basura eh. Hindi ka nila pakikinggan sa iyong pleading, ganon. And then I even pled na kung I have been pleading to them na kung pwedeng barilin na nila ako. Yung ganun ba? Kasi parang hindi ko maatim yung kanilang ginagawang sexual abuse, although continuous yung interrogation and all that.
Well, under torture, I was told by prisoners who were tortured, because I personally wasn't, they thought of friends who underwent greater suffering than they. They thought of people who had died, and that made them bear and stand under torture. Secondly, they thought of people they had worked with, people who would expect them to stand firm and to go through that experience and still come out strong and faithful to their commitment. So both ideas of friends and comrades who had died or who had suffered greater pain, and of people who expect them to be strong. This gave them strength under torture.
Nag-ano na nga ako, nag-try akong pakamatay eh. Nag-ano ako ng panyo, nasa loob akong Bartolina, tapos sinano ko lang. Kaya lang, nung nagsuswell na yung mukha ko, yung talagang na ako makahinga. Iniisip ko, sabi ko, papakamatay ako, yun nga gusto nila mangyari. Yung bang parang, di masaya pa sila. Hindi na sila napagod na patayin ako. Kaya inano ko, sabi ko, hindi ako mapakamatay. Kung ano yung gusto nila, sige, patagalan kami. Yung ganon.
Bago ko hinuli, ang pamumuhay ko noon, medyo kahit paano, sumasapat yung inaanin namin sa bukid, kahit na medyo mataas yung buwis ng magsasaka sa may-ari ng lupa. Ngayon, yung pamumuhay ko ngayon, naghihikahos dahil sa una, ang mga kagamitan sa pagsasaka, sobra yung taas at ang presyo naman ng palay masyadong mababa.
In the province of Bataan, home to Delfin Lazarte, the establishment of the Bataan Export Processing Zone in 1975 spurred strong protests from the residents of the province, prompting the military to deploy massive troops to counter the growing unrest. It was at this juncture that poor peasants like Delfin Lazarte, an active member of the Barrio Peasant Organization, came face to face with the ruthless methods of the military in its counter-insurgency program.
Pagdating sa detachment, tinipa ako pagkatapos bumagsak ako doon sa lupa. Nung pagbagsak ko sa lupa, yung mga army naglapitan sa akin pagkatapos pinagsisipa na ako. Ngayon, tinatanong nila sa akin kung nasaan yung mga NPA o mga kuan, yun ang tinatanong nila. Eh, wala naman akong alam doon dahil nagsasaka lang ako. Ngayon, yung
Delfin Lazarte suffered severe torture in the hands of the military. He was made to endure hard physical blows in the different parts of his body and several times threatened with death. An initial survey conducted by the Samahan ng mga Ex-Detainee Laban sa Detensyon at para sa Amnestia, or SELDA, revealed that 75% of the ex-political detainees came from the ranks of the basic masses, a fact that stems from the reality that it was the basic masses who bore the brunt of militarization in the countryside. In the course of their imprisonment, they were separated from their sources of livelihood, resulting in the deepening impoverishment of their families. The physical effects of torture bore heavily on them, considering they must work long hours in the farm or in the sea to earn a living. Ireneo Pring, a fisherman from Abukay, Bataan, was arrested in April 1983. While undergoing interrogation, he was at various times given violent blows on the face and other parts of the body, insulted and subjected to extreme psychological torment because of repeated death threats. He was released from prison after his family paid an exorbitant bail bond by selling out a small piece of land. In essence, Ireneo's incarceration and torture, like Delfin's, speak of an injustice common to poor peasants caught in the brutal war waged by the government against the insurgent forces in the countryside. This injustice continues to haunt Ireneo's memory to this day.
Isang tao ay hindi mo dapat parusahan kung halimbawa suspect lamang ang iyong kaso, lalo na sila ang umahawak ng batas. Na ang pinasusunod nila ay para sa karapatan tao. Ngunit ang karapatan tao naman ay hindi nakakamit ng mga detainee. Unang-una, ang karapatang dapat.
If you look at our experience, you will find that if you are rich enough and you can pay the good lawyers and you can afford to maintain a suit, justice can easily be obtained. But if you are poor, it is difficult because you have to shop for a lawyer from Flag, PLL, or maybe from Mabini, who has very little time for everyone. And you are lucky if you are able to find one who is ready to handle your case for free. But to the greater majority of our people, these legal services are not for free, and they are seldom the kind of services which for which they can be satisfied. So if this relationship continue, if the 70% of our people continue to be weak for lack of economic resources, then it is very possible to maintain also this gap in the dispensation and administration of justice. we have also shown from recent experience that if the poor can, bind themselves together, even without recourse to the usual legal processes, that they can in fact obtain justice through their united efforts.
May hangad lumaya sa kamay ng mga Panginoong may lupa. Yaman na nagmula sa akin, palayan sa kanya napunta. Sa akin ay putika.
The worsening impoverishment and the escalating militarization in the countryside only helped strengthen the peasants' resolve to improve their lot. Locked in arms, they marched to press their demands for a genuine land reform program and a halt to the militarization in the countryside. Delfin Lazarte viewed his detention as just another chain in his people's long march towards freedom and democracy.
Ang sinasabi namin mo talaga ay maliwanag. Uuwi kami sa kalanginan kung saan kami malakas. At kung saan kami malakas, ipatutupad ang agugutom sa magtubukin ang tunay na reforma sa lupa. Ang hungry people, ang magpapatupad ng tunay na reforma sa lupa. Ang lupa ay binigay ng Diyos para sa lahat ng kanyang mga anak, hindi para ang kinilamang ng ilang tao. Ang ating pagkatibakan mga Diyos at mga taruhan, mga kasama. Ngayon, pagbalik natin sa kalayunan, hindi natin susundin ay nag-adjust, no? Sapagkat ang adjust nila ay ginawa ng naghaharing huli na dahilan ng aming paghihirap. Ang susundin namin ay ang hayag mo ay nakasando. Mga kasama, sugod sa Malacanang, putasin ang Mendiola! Magsasakang handang makiamo, matatag ang hindi. Matalas ang gulo, ang bawat katagang manggaling sa akin ay taga sa dibdib ng mapang-alipin.
The working-class brand of militants stems from the fact that under the prevailing capitalist system, the workers are the most downtrodden, severely oppressed, and exploited. As the workers seek redress for their grievances, they wield the most basic right, the right to deny their labor to the capitalist or the right to strike. The picket line becomes an arena of contention between capitalist might and working-class unity. In the picket line, they acquire the virtue of tempering their spirits and steadying their ranks for more arduous battles. Alfredo Manzos' deep devotion to the cause of the working class earned for him 3 years at the Bicutan Detention Center.
Tubong Bicol ako, Daraga, Albay, mula sa pamilya ng mga magsasaka. Nakatapos ako ng pag-aaral, kahit nahirap yung tatay at nanay ko, sa sariling pagpupursige ko na rin. Nag-aaral sa araw, pumapasok sa gabi, pa-extra sa isang pabrika.
Alfredo Manzos was arrested with 20 other trade union leaders in 1982 during the intensifying labor repression. While under the custody of the military, he was insulted, assaulted with fist blows, and made to submit to several hours of grueling torture. He was released in 1985. He tried to return to work in the factory, but in vain.
Sinubukan kong bumalik dito sa Pilplex upang kausapin yung manager, sa personal manager para ako makabalik sa trabaho. Subalit ang nangyari, tulad sa ginawa nilang termination paper nung bago pa lang kami mahuli, kami raw hindi na pwedeng bumalik sa trabaho. Damang-dama ko pa noon yung epekto ng kulungan at ng torture. Parang nag-iisa lang ako. Parang takot ako sa mga taong nasasalubong ko. Mismong sa isipan ko, makakita lang ng militar. Natatakot na ako na sila ay huli-muli sa akin. Halos para sa akin noon, yung bago ako palalaya, lahat ng militar ay kaaway.
For Alfredo Manzos, each day spent in prison was a struggle against brutal and subtle harassments. But throughout his stay in prison, he and his fellow detainees were determined to assert and defend their rights. They were aware that even as they suffered the indignities of imprisonment because of their political ideals, their countrymen outside prison and military stockades suffered harsh oppression and repression. For in the entire 20-year Marcos regime, civil liberties were curtailed. The working class suffered severe blows during the Marcos regime. They were banned from striking for just wages and improved working conditions. Attempts to organize and unionize were met by intimidation from the management. Trade union leaders were arrested and indefinitely detained, picket lines were dispersed, sometimes resulting in the violent death of strikers. Factories and workers' communities were raided by military operatives. The Marcos dictatorship relied heavily on its military infrastructures to directly implement its fascist laws upon the people. The combined force of dictatorial decrees and the monstrous military machinery sought to crush all opposition, not only the armed struggle in the countryside, but also the mass movement in the cities. The military institutions stood mightily to quell all forms of opposition. No one was spared. One of the first to be detained after the proclamation of martial law, recalls his prison experiences.
3 psychiatrists came to see us and visit us. Probably they wanted to know how we felt and why, if we were released at all, what we were thinking, what we had in mind. And one of the questions that they asked me is, are you not? How do you feel about being arrested? Are you not bitter? My answer was that I'm not. That I was not. Anyway, the whole country is a big concentration camp. No? Probably we who are here inside Bonifacio are probably luckier than those that are outside. They don't know what's going to happen.
The rise of a popular government did not eradicate the possibility of a fascist resurgence. Months after its installation to power, the Aquino government's image has already been tarnished by a new spate of killings, most notable of which was the brutal killing of Rolando Olalia and Leonor Alayay.
No decent person can allow such things to happen without justice being done.
The worst form of human rights violation is salvaging. And I'm afraid what happened to Mr. Olalia may be a prelude to that, so that the fascist forces, instead of arresting people, will just execute them.
The death of Rolando Olalia, twice a political detainee under the Marcos regime and a valiant leader of the labor movement, brings home the brutal warning to those who, like the political detainees, would take the side of the toiling and oppressed masses. The assassination of Rolando Olalia relived in the minds of our people the 17 dreadful years of martial law and drew close parallels with the trend of the human rights violations of the new regime.
Gusto ko siyang maalaala palagi at tandaan ng marami na palagi ang nasa isip niya ang kapakanan ng mga maliliit. Ang kapakanan ng mga naaapi. Kasi talagang ganoon siya.
The memory of those who spilled their blood for the cause of the labor movement will always live in the minds of the workers. They shall always strengthen their unity and persevere in the struggle to realize their dreams of a better future.
Simple lang ang pangarap ko sa buhay. Mabuhay na masaya. Hindi lang sa aking sarili o sa aking pamilya, kundi maging sa mga kapwa ko Pilipino. Na kung masaya sila nakapaligid sa akin, masaya na rin ako. Pangarap ko bilang isang manggagawa, makita ng mga manggagawa dito sa buong Pilipinas, o kung hindi man sa buong daigdig, na mayroong tunay na demokrasya, tunay na kalayaan, at kapayapaan. Pangarap ko na sa kasalukuyan na ang wilga namin ay magtagumpay at matapos, at hindi lang dito, sa Wilgo sa Philippines, kundi sa iba't iba pang kapwa manggagawa at kapwa unionista na hanggang sa kasalukuyan ay nasa Wilga pa rin. Sana mabigyang katarungan ang mga manggagawa at ang pakikibaka ng mga manggagawa ay maging tagumpay. Dahil nakikita ko at dama ko rin na hanggang walang katarungan ang mga manggagawa, walang katarungan nakakamit ang mga manggagawa, ang pakikibaka namin ay hindi rin titigil.
Kami po'y taga-Rebels, kami po'y taga-Belga, humingi ng suporta para sa araw ng pag-uwi.
Many children were scarred by the detention of their parents. To date, many children continue to suffer from emotional setbacks and social maladjustments brought about by their separation from their parents. In June 1985, the Children's Rehabilitation Center, or CRC, was set up to address the various problems besetting Filipino children traumatized by their separation from their parents and other direct experiences with militarization.
Ang mga bata dito sa center ay dalawang klase o dalawang grupo. Yung tinatawag naming direct victims of militarization or of human rights violations or human rights abuses, at saka yung tinatawag naming indirect victims. Yung tinatawag na direct victims, ito yung mga bata na tuwirang naging biktima ng human rights abuses, no? Pwedeng sa countryside o pwedeng dito sa city. Sila yung mga batang mismong na-aresto at na-detain. Sila yung mga batang mismong na-torture, na-rape. Sila yung mga batang mismong nagkaroon ng karanasan sa armed conflict o sa labanan sa countryside o doon sa mga areas na merong mga labanan. Yung tinatawag naming dituwirang mga biktima, ito yung mga bata na ang mga magulang ang siyang biktima. Sila yung mga bata na may mga magulang na pinatay, may mga magulang na hanggang ngayon ay nawawala, mga magulang na na-detain din at saka na-aresto, at mga magulang na biktima ng massacre.
Political detention was responsible for the disintegration of family structures. It shattered family bonds and disrupted the normal growth of children. As it drew families apart, a variety of emotional disturbances occurred among children.
Ang mga bata naman, ang nagiging problema talaga sa kanila sa pagkawasak ng tinatawag naming family structures ay nagiging very helpless sila sa isang sitwasyon.
Chris, youngest son of Lynette Pardalis, witnessed at so tender in age the arrest of her mother in 1985. The detention of his mother was even more aggravated when his father was soon abducted by military men and never came home to return to their family. Right after her release, Lynette concentrated on her husband's case, a case similar to 600 others who simply disappeared during the Marcos regime. Rebuilding her family entailed the painstaking process of making the feeble minds of her children comprehend the disappearance of their father.
Kaagad yung pagkawala niya, kahit na na-release na ako, hindi namin pa rin mabuo yung pamilya, no? Tapos, hindi rin nga makakonsentrate ako as nanay na pagtuunan sila dahil nga may pagtutuunan mo rin yung paghahanap. Tapos yung lalo na dun sa youngest ko, nagkaroon talaga ng setback sa development niya, no? Dahil yung hindi rin naman siya sanay na wala yung tatay niya. Noon naman bago nung mga nangyari, buo rin naman kami. Tapos yung youngest ko nga nagna-nightmare siya dahil hindi pa niya ma-conceptualize kung paano yung nangyari. Ganun din kahit din sa eldest ko, kahit na naipapaintindi sa kanya, ano rin siya yung may insecurity ba? Dito naman sa youngest, yung paminsan-minsan nagtatanong, hindi naman pa maipaintindi ng lubusan. Kaya yung ang hirap talagang ipaintindi, bakit wala yung tatay? Wala rin namang, di mo naman masabi talagang patay na, wala ka naman papakitang libingan.
Addressing the problems that beset Filipino children traumatized by the effects of militarization entailed the gathering of the knowledge, resources, and experiences of human rights workers and the parents of the children. There arose a great need to map out programs for the children, as well as their parents, to rebuild and revitalize their broken homes. In these homely grounds, the children learn the rudiments of open education and the cherished values of home and family. In this healthy atmosphere, they enjoy their childhood without fear and learn to smile once again. undertaking a special summer education, these children receive their certificates of graduation. In the struggle for human rights, this is a small but symbolic step towards mending their broken childhood. Together with their parents, a bigger battle must be waged to attain their full rehabilitation and reintegration into the mainstream of society.
Talaga bang hindi ka itinuturing na tao? Talagang hindi mo malilimutan ang nangyari sa iyo kung naganap sa iyo talaga yan, yung bilang isang detainee ka, naging detenido ka. Dahil ang pinakamasakit, iniisip mo, tao ka rin naman. Yun ang pinakamasakit na parte roon
I'm afraid that most of the political prisoners are still finding it very difficult to get back into normal lives. And then the disruption in their lives has been so traumatic that quite a number of are having a lot of difficulty trying to readjust again. I am not aware of any particular national program or meaningful program to do it. Now, there are various organizations, however, which are trying to help.
Itinayo ang MAG bilang tugon sa pangangailangan ng panahon ni Marcos. Kasi sa health sector, wala pang isang organisasyon noon na tumutugon sa pangangailangan ng mga biktima ng human rights violations. Maraming tinotorture, maraming nasa salvage, o maraming political detainees na nakakulong pero walang mga pwedeng makuhang mga doktor na pwedeng bumisita sa kanila. Sa ngayon, syempre, nandun pa rin yung sinasabi nating torture at pagdedetine ng mga political, ng mga taong with political beliefs na mukhang naiba dun sa gobyerno, at hanggang sa ngayon, tinutuloy natin yung serbisyo sa kanila. Ang isang bagong ginawa ng Medical Action Group nitong maraming na-release na mga political prisoners after the February Revolt ay yung pagtatayo ng Philippine Action Concerning Torture.
PACT, or the Philippine Action Concerning Torture, has successfully launched its initial rehabilitation program for the victims of torture.
Well, we have our usual medical and psychological services which are available to all ex-political detainees who have experienced torture in the hands of the military. And some of them we have cases who had to undergo reconstructive surgery for wounds sustained during their detention. And then we have under our employ 2 part-time psychiatrists who are ready to give any kind of psychological help that might be required by these victims.
Alfonso Sabillano was considered to be one of the longest-held political prisoners during the Marcos dictatorship. For 14 years, home for him was the National Bilibid Prison at Muntinlupa, Rizal. Before his arrest, he was an active organizer of the Kabataang Makabayan in Tondo and a cultural worker of the Tanghalang Bayan in the late 60s. Like many other detainees, he was charged with criminal offenses to justify his prolonged incarceration.
Sa ngayon meron na akong hanap buhay, may pamilya na ako. Meron ka pa rin hinahanap meron ka hinahanap para sa sarili mo. Na matagal mo itong dinaka mula pa lang sa pagkakakulong mo, paglaya mo, hanggang sa nagkapamilya ka. Yung tinatawag na paghahanap ng katarungan. Alam natin na hindi natin mapapasubali na maraming biktima na hanggang sa ngayon, mga nakakulong sa mga detensyon at mga pambansang bilanggo na wala pa rin kasalanan. Naiisa lang ang damdamin namin na naghahanap kami ng katarungan. Ang kasaysayan ko, hindi pwedeng mawala sa isipan ko na hanggat hindi nagkakaroon ng katugunan, yung naging karasan ko ng 14 na taon sa bilangguan, ay hindi na mawawala sa isip ko yan at hanapin ko yan. At ikukwento ko pa yan sa magiging anak ko. Dahil hindi ko pwede ipagkaila ito sa anak ko at maaaring mangyari ulit ito sa anak ko kung hanggat hindi nagbabago yung sistema.
Kaya sino dapat anuin ko ngayon? Sisihin. Sisihin ko ba ang sarili ko? O yung lipunan yung panahon ba ni Marcos dapat ko sisihin? O hanggang sa ngayon dapat pa ako manisi? Yan pwede mo, yan ang tinatanong sa sarili ko eh.
Sa dinanas kong pahirap, iba't ibang forma ng torture na ginawa sa akin ng mga intelligence at iba't ibang ahente pa ng militar, nandun yung paghahanap ko ng katarungan. Maging nung nasa loob pa kami ng kulungan.
Alfredo Manzos, together with 20 other detainees, filed a 6.5 million peso suit for torture and illegal confiscation of property against General Fabian Vera and other top-ranking military authorities. But the farcical judicial system of the Marcos government did not allow that justice be meted out to the detainees.
Subalit tatlong ulit itong na-dismiss. Hanggang sa iakyat namin ito sa Supreme Court, ganun din, na-dismiss pa rin. Dahil siguro sa lakas pa rin nung kapanahonan ni Marcos noon at ni General Vera, na ang tanging pinaka-principal na nakademanda rito ay si General Fabian Vera. Na-dismiss man yung kaso sa Korte ng Quezon City, yung maging sa Supreme Court, hindi pa rin kami nawala ng pag-asa. Isinampa namin yung kasong torture laban sa mga na-torture sa amin, at ito ay nakasampa sa United Nations. At sa kasalukuyan, hindi ko alam kung anong balita o anong development tungkol sa kaso na yun.
Yes, we filed this damage suit against Mr. Marcos and Mr. Vera in Hawaii because they are there. We would have preferred to file it here. Now, Mr. Harold Fong, the federal judge in Hawaii, dismissed the suit on very complicated grounds of act of state doctrine and head of state immunity and so on, and we have appealed the case. It is now pending in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals that sits in San Francisco, USA. Now, we are quite hopeful that we will get a reversal of the decision of Mr. Fong, and therefore then we will proceed to trial on the merits. This is essentially a torture suit. You see, we're talking in the Philippines of about 70,000 former political prisoners. Many people incidentally do not know that there were that many who were put in stockades and jails and safe houses. And out of these, about 50% or 35,000 people were tortured. And you know that we have about 3,000 people who disappeared. And then, 3,000 people who were salvaged, who were murdered in that regime, and about 400 people who have disappeared and whom we cannot find at the moment. Now, basically, this suit deals with the torture aspects, and we have gotten a cross-section of the various victims of this injustice. Now, this, of course, does not preclude the filing of any appropriate case here in the Philippines itself. Unfortunately, if you will probably notice, the issue of justice for the victims of human rights violations in the Philippines seems to be proceeding at an extremely slow pace.
The issue of political prisoners under any dispensation involves more than just legal definitions and semantics. What is legally unassailable may not be morally and politically defensible. If the Aquino government is to be different from the Marcos dictatorship in the perception of the people, then something must be done immediately to effect the release of political prisoners who continue to suffer inside detention centers and penitentiaries. In addition, the government must also take immediate legal and punitive measures against members of the military who have committed grave human rights violations under both the Marcos and the Aquino governments.
Kapatid, while concentrating right now on the release of the prisoners who are still unreleased and also for their families' welfare, are trying to get compensation from the present government as a successor to the Marcos government of compensation for those who lost their jobs who lost their homes, whose families were separated.
So, para sa akin,
Political detainees seeking indemnification and reparation for the damages inflicted upon them by the military discovered that justice can be elusive even under the new dispensation. The tremendous might of the fascist structures left behind by Marcos blocked all avenues to justice. Furthermore, the new government did not seriously address the problems expressed by the detainees, thereby leaving them utterly helpless and almost hopeless.
natitretan yung lawyer, yung mga ganon. Pero sa dahil na ipinagpatuloy ko, parang nawawalan ako ng pag-asa na. Dahil sabi ko, bakit parang wala nang magagawa talaga ang Human Rights Commission, ang human rights lawyers, wala na silang magawa. Talagang hindi ko nakikitang makakatulong pa na makunan ko ng justice yung aking kaso.
Sandali lang, Hilda. Kasi siguro hindi lang pagkukulang ng ng Human Rights Commission o ng mga human rights lawyer yung hindi pagkuha ng katarungan sa mga kasong ifinail ng mga ex-detainees. Ang masisisiguro natin dito ay yung present structures na namana pa dun sa nakaraang rehimen ni Marcos. Nakita natin na hindi pa rin nababago yung mga fascist structures o yung tinatawag natin dictatorship structures nung nakaraang rehimen, at nandiyan pa rin yung mga military na nag-violate doon sa mga human rights ng mga detainees.
Lupao, Nueva Ecija, February 10, 1987. Soldiers burned houses and farms, looted the personal belongings of the farmers, and killed 18 civilians in what was later justified as a counter-insurgency operation.
From the observations and data that reached the offices of the PCHR, the Presidential Committee on Human Rights, as well as in the Task Force Detainees Philippines, it appears very strongly that human rights violations are still perpetrated, and the reasons could be very simple. The repressive presidential laws of Mr. Marcos are not all abrogated. These are more or less protecting still the military, shielding them, so to say. And of course, the same people are still there, minus Mr. Enrile and Mr. Marcos. So, sa akin walang alinlangan ko sabihin nyo na, despite what the First Lady said that, President Aquino said that she's after promotion of human rights, there's a difference between the order and the concretization.
The whole problem goes back to the desire of this government to prosecute the human rights violators. I don't think the government is ready to do that. In fact, it has demonstrated the opposite.
It's true what our workers and some friends were saying. PCHR had no teeth. We could investigate. What happens with investigation? We could subpoena the military, hard to get them, but if we could get them, we could not punish them. Because we had no power of prosecution. Ang nakikita ko, kung binigyan ng optional, at least, optional power to prosecute good cases, I think we could have been more effective. And that is really my frustration, that was a body really meant to do justice to people who really earned naman, and do justice to people, the victims, and we could not do very much. I was hoping that, and that's the purpose why I tried to get into that, because perhaps what we could not do in TFDP and other NGOs, we could hopefully do in this, but we could not do much. And then, anong impact? I think people are disappointed, just as we were disappointed. And the main thing is we were not supported by the President.
I am quite disappointed about the pace of securing justice for the victims of human rights violations. I think the matter of sequestration or securing of or recovery of ill-gotten wealth is going at a much faster pace. I hope we do not lose track of the fact that justice is an even more important issue.
I share really the impatience. I share also, the feelings of these victims, especially wanting for justice, and we could not give them, much to our desire. I share also the fate of these people now, ongoing militarization still, and with this Alsa massacre coming up or going on, ang tingin ko sa situation, it would be walang malaking diferensya sa panahon ni Mr. Marcos.
Palagay ko kung maibibigay ng kasalukuyang administrasyon yung kahilingan ng mga magsasaka na yung tunay na reforma sa lupa, palagay ko magkakaroon ng pangmatagalang kapayapaan. Pero kung hindi maibibigay ng yung kasalukuyang gobyerno yung kahilingan ng mga magsasaka, hindi mawawalan ng mga political detainees sa Pilipinas. Dahil patuloy pa rin yung pakikipaglaban ng mga political detainees ng mga magsasaka, hindi doon sa karapatan ng mga magsasaka sa lupa.
Now their voices speak not only as ex-political detainees, but also as peasants, workers, human rights advocates, and activists of the nationalist movement, articulating and working for the attainment of their legitimate demands.
Everybody must speak out his rights, speak out and be heard, and continuously guard those rights. I think that freedom can only be preserved by unremitting, unceasing vigilance. It is not something that comes free. I think that it is something we always have to fight for, to preserve.
Political detainees are, because of their experience, fiercely committed to democracy, because they have been themselves victims of human rights abuses. So I think political detainees can play an important role in fighting for respect for human rights.
For these ex-political detainees who find in their common experiences a strong bond of solidarity, renewing visions and commitments means rekindling the flame of justice and freedom in the people's hearts and minds. For them, the struggle continues beyond the walls of prison.
In short, when we said at that time when Marcos left, never again shall we allow a dictatorship in our country. Thank you very much.
Hindi tayo titigil hanggat di nagwawagi. Ang ating mithiin magkapantay-pantay, walang magsasamantala, walang mang-aapi. Yan ang sandigan ng ating pamumuhay. Pasya ng karamihan ay ating liligumin. Agad tutugin ng walang alinlangan, mananalig ang lakas ng taong bayan. Pagtatanggol natin ang ating kalayaan.